The crystal chandeliers of Harmony Hall cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floor as Naomi Chen adjusted her black vest one final time. 6 months waiting tables at Manhattan's most exclusive concert venue, and she still felt the weight of judgment every time she entered the VIP lounge. Tonight would be different, though. Tonight, she carried a secret that would change everything. Table 12 needs their champagne refilled, barked Marcus, the head waiter, barely glancing her way. And don't linger. Mr. Blackwood doesn't like staff hovering. Naomi nodded silently, loading her tray with bottles of Dom Perignon. Preston Blackwood 3. Even his name dripped with old money and older arrogance. The tech mogul had made billions from his audio streaming empire, Soundwave, and never let anyone forget it. She approached the VIP section where Blackwood held court, surrounded by venture capitalists and society wives dripping in diamonds. His booming laugh echoed across the room as he regaled his guests with stories of his latest acquisition, a struggling classical music academy he'd bought for pocket change. The building alone is worth 50 million, he announced, swirling his champagne. I'll probably just tear it down and put up condos. Who needs another music school in this city? Naomi's hand trembled slightly as she refilled his glass. She thought of her daughter, Maya, and the countless hours they'd spent at that very academy. You there, Blackwood snapped his fingers at her without making eye contact. Tell the kitchen, I want my steak prepared by Chef Antoine himself. Not one of his underlings. I can taste the difference. Of course, sir, Naomi said softly. Speak up. I can barely hear you. What kind of service is this? He turned to his companions. The help these days. No standards anymore. As Naomi turned to leave, a small commotion erupted near the entrance. A young girl, no more than 8 years old, had somehow slipped past security. She wore a stained blue dress and clutched a worn violin case to her chest, her eyes scanning the crowd desperately. Naomi's heart seized. What was her daughter doing here? She was supposed to be with Mrs. Rodriguez next door. Security. Blackwood shouted, his face reddening. Get that street urchin out of here before she steals something. Maya's eyes found her mother's, and Naomi saw the tears streaming down her daughter's face. The girl began moving her hands frantically in sign language. Mama, I'm sorry. Mrs. Rodriguez fell. She needs help. I didn't know where else to go. Naomi's professional composure cracked. She dropped her tray on the nearest table and rushed toward her daughter, hands flying in response. Is she okay? Did you call 911? What is this circus? Blackwood stood, his voice cutting through the murmur of concerned guests. He strode toward Maya, towering over the small girl. I said, get this child out of here. When Maya didn't respond, only stared up at him with wide, frightened eyes, Blackwood's face contorted with contempt. What's wrong with her? Is she deaf or just stupid? He waved his hand in front of Maya's face. Hello. Anyone home in there? A cold fury crystallized in Naomi's chest. She stepped between Blackwood and her daughter, her voice steady and clear. She is deaf, Mr. Blackwood. And she's worth 100 of you. The VIP lounge fell silent. Blackwood's face flushed purple. How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am? Marcus. Get this woman out of my sight. Fire her. Now. Marcus appeared, looking uncomfortable but determined. Naomi, I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave. And take the girl with you. Gladly, Naomi said, wrapping her arm around Maya's shoulders. But as she turned to go, she paused. Mr. Blackwood, before I leave, there's something you should know about that music academy you're planning to destroy. I don't have time for your sob stories, he sneered. Security. The Virtuoso Youth Orchestra performs there every Saturday, Naomi continued, her voice carrying across the room. 25 children from low-income families. Many of them are deaf or hard of hearing. They learn to play by feeling the vibrations, by reading the conductor's movements, by pure determination. My daughter is one of them. How touching, Blackwood said with dripping sarcasm. And what does this have to do with me? 3 years ago, a wealthy donor established a trust to keep that academy running. The trust was set up to last 20 years, with one condition, that the academy continue serving underprivileged children with disabilities. When you bought the building, you also acquired the legal obligation to honor that trust. Blackwood laughed. Legal obligations. My lawyers will find a way around whatever small print nonsense you're talking about. They always do. Perhaps, Naomi said quietly. But you might want to ask your legal team about the Chen Music Foundation. Specifically, the clause that states if the terms of the trust are violated, control of the academy, and the surrounding block of buildings, reverts to the foundation trustees. The color drained from Blackwood's face. The Chen Foundation. That's one of the largest music endowments in the country. What does that have to do with, my father-in-law established it 40 years ago, Naomi said, watching understanding dawn on his face. David Chen, the conductor. I believe you own several of his recordings. After my husband died in a car accident 5 years ago, I stepped away from the foundation's management. I wanted to understand what life was like for families who depended on places like that academy. So I took this job. I waited tables. I listened. I watched. She glanced around the room at the wealthy patrons, some of whom were beginning to recognize her. Naomi Chen, whispered one woman. The violinist. I saw her perform at Carnegie Hall. I've spent 6 months documenting every conversation in this restaurant, Naomi continued. Including yours tonight, Mr. Blackwood. Your intention to demolish the academy and violate the trust terms. The foundation's lawyers will be very interested in this recording. She pulled out her phone from her vest pocket. In New York, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. I consented. Blackwood's lawyer, who had been sitting quietly at the table, suddenly stood up. Preston, don't say another word. But Naomi wasn't finished. The property deed has a clause that if you violate the trust, ownership reverts to the foundation for exactly $1. Those 5 buildings you thought you'd turn into condos. Worth about $200 million, by my estimate. All of it goes back to the foundation if you break the terms. This is blackmail. Blackwood sputtered. No, Naomi said calmly. This is accountability. You built an empire on streaming music, but you've never understood what music really means. It's not a commodity. It's not background noise for your expensive dinners. For my daughter and children like her, it's a voice when they have no voice. It's connection when the world tries to isolate them. Maya tugged on her mother's sleeve, signing quickly. Naomi smiled sadly and signed back, before translating for the room. My daughter wants you to know that she's been practicing for months. The youth orchestra is performing at a benefit concert next week, at your concert hall, actually. She learned Vivaldi's 4 Seasons on her violin. She wants to invite you. Why on earth would I come to that? Blackwood said weakly. Because, Naomi said, it might be the first thing you've truly heard in years. She took Maya's hand and began to walk toward the exit. The crowd parted before them. Wait, Blackwood called out. His voice had lost its commanding edge. The academy. You said there were 25 children. Naomi turned back. Yes. And they all have disabilities. Deaf, hard of hearing, blind, autistic. Some have mobility issues. All of them have more courage in their little fingers than you've shown in your entire life. Blackwood was quiet for a long moment. The room waited. I'll be at the concert, he said finally. And the academy stays open. That's not enough, Naomi said firmly. The city needs 5 more academies like that one. Soundwave makes $3 billion a year. You could fund them easily. You're pushing your luck, Blackwood warned, but there was no heat in his voice. I'm pushing for what's right. You have a choice, Mr. Blackwood. You can tear down and destroy, or you can build something that matters. Something that will outlive your bank account and your reputation. One of the women at Blackwood's table spoke up. Preston, my nephew is deaf. I never told you because you never seemed like you'd care. But I'd donate to this cause. A lot of us would. Another voice joined in. The Peterson Foundation would match any contribution. Blackwood looked around at his peers, perhaps truly seeing them for the first time. Then he looked at Maya, who was watching him with those same wide eyes, no longer frightened, but curious. 5 academies, he said slowly. And I want to meet every one of those kids. Not for publicity. I want to understand. That's a start, Naomi said. As she and Maya finally left the VIP lounge, she felt her daughter's small hand squeeze her own. Maya signed a question. Why did you help him, Mama? He was so mean. Naomi knelt down to her daughter's level, signing her response so only Maya could see. Because everyone deserves a chance to hear the music, baby. Even people who've been deaf to it their whole lives. 3 weeks later, Preston Blackwood sat in the front row of Harmony Hall's concert space, not the VIP section, but the main floor, surrounded by families in their Sunday best and children buzzing with excitement. On stage, 25 young musicians took their positions. When Maya Chen lifted her violin to begin Vivaldi's Spring, Blackwood closed his eyes. He'd heard countless performances in this venue. Technically perfect renditions by world-class orchestras. But he'd never heard anything like this. It wasn't perfect. There were missed notes and uncertain bowing. But there was something else, something fierce and defiant and absolutely beautiful. These children played like their lives depended on it, because in a way, they did. For the first time in decades, Preston Blackwood felt music not in his ears, but in his chest. In his bones. In that hollow place that money had never quite filled, when the last note faded, he stood to applaud. The rest of the audience rose with him. Naomi Chen, sitting in the wings with tears streaming down her face, signed to her daughter from across the stage. "You did it, my love. You helped him here." Maya signed back, her small face serious. "No, Mama. You did. You showed him how." And perhaps that was the greatest music of all, not the notes themselves, but the silence that follows, full of possibility and change.